This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of our investment group, and your host of Washington Calling, where we interview leading voices from business, politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, we are fortunate to have a distinguished guest who is a dear friend, Professor C. Raj Kumar, a Rhodes Scholar and the founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University in India. He was appointed as the Vice Chancellor at the age of 34 in 2009 when the university was just established. Thank you for coming to our show and welcome to our show. So I
Thank you
wanted
very much.
to
It's a
ask,
pleasure and honor to talk to you.
yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for all you do to make a profound difference. And thank you for your leadership. Professor Kumar, you conceived the idea of establishing India's first global university, and you were appointed as a Vice Chancellor at a very young age. Please tell our global audience how this idea occurred to you and why did you choose Haryana, which is not that far from Delhi, to establish such a wonderful university? And I have been there. I want to tell the audience it's a wonderful and great place to be in the campus. Professor Kumar?
Yeah, thank you very much. 20 years ago, in the year 1998, I was a student at Oxford University as the Rhodes Scholar, and I was deeply inspired by my experience of being a student at Oxford. And as many of us who had the privilege of studying in institutions in India and have got the opportunity to go abroad, the immediate thing that struck me when I was a student at Oxford was the extraordinary emphasis on knowledge creation and transformative education. How education can make a significant difference in the lives of people, and how research and knowledge creation through publications and thought leadership of individual scholars can impact the humanity at large. Such was the vision that was deeply inspiring for me. I studied in two good Indian universities, the University of Delhi as well as the Loyola College Madras. But I have to confess that the opportunity to being at Oxford was so transformative that I really felt that are there universities like this in India? I asked the question to myself. Of course, that journey later took me to Harvard. After Oxford, I went to Harvard. I did another master's at Harvard. And I must say that that was a truly transformative experience in my life. The extraordinary emphasis on research, knowledge creation, but more importantly, to recognize the importance of institution building for nation building. That young minds can shape the future of societies was deeply ingrained in the Harvard University's environment. Also, I was deeply inspired by the commitment to pluralism and diversity within the larger US civic and political culture, all of which enabled me to think about the idea of building a university. To cut the story short, after I graduated in the year 2000, I pretty much spent the next decade working in New York, Tokyo, and Hong Kong, initially as a lawyer, then as a law academic, and then, of course, wrote a paper entitled Establishing India's First Global University. And in the year 2006, I got to meet with an Indian benefactor by name Naveen Jindal. Mr. Jindal
Right.
himself was a parliamentarian, a distinguished businessman, a head of a major corporation known as Jindal Steel and Power Limited, did his master's from the University of Texas in Dallas, and was deeply inspired by his own experience of studying in the
Wow.
United States. And so I got to meet him and spent a year from October 2006 to November 2007 persuading Mr. Jindal to do three things. One, to make a substantial financial commitment. Second, to do it in a not for profit manner. And third, to let me have the academic freedom and autonomy and independence to build a world class university. By late 2007, he agreed to all of that and invited me to move to India to set up the university. And I moved to India in January 2008. To answer your question as to why it was Haryana, Mr. Jindal's family is from
Oh, okay.
Haryana, from a place called Hisar, which is, of course,
Right.
further, in the interior parts of Haryana. We chose the district of Sonipat because it is the closest part to Delhi and yet in the state of Haryana. And that kind of fitted into my own personal scheme of things because I was keen to have access to Delhi, and that's how the idea of creating this university began.
Wonderful. And the university has been in existence for the 10 years. By the way, you went to two universities, Oxford and Harvard, where I sit on the board of Harvard University as well, on the
Great.
Kennedy School of Government, and also part of
Wonderful.
the university board. So it's a wonderful place. Both of them um, are one of the best institutions I call Ivy League in the world. So tell us, when people talk about the this university, what's the first thing that comes to people's mind when they hear about this university? What kind of a center of excellence do you have, and what does the university have that stands out?
So, the most important part of our university's vision is to promote globalism in all its forms and manifestations. Our middle name is global, but our commitment to globalism goes beyond our ability to engage with the world. At a time when societies are fragmented through a myopic vision and narrow confines of divisions that affect our ability to build an egalitarian society, the values that a university stands for, particularly when it engages with the world at large, that makes it important. So for us, if there's one unique feature of OP Jindal Global University, it is our deepest and most pervasive commitment to promoting internationalism in all what we do. Of course, to do that, we need to focus on research. We need to focus on bringing the best minds, which is the faculty. We need to be able to create opportunities for students, including students who can't afford education, through scholarship and fellowship. We also need to build a vibrant culture of research, and that creates an ecosystem. So today, if we've been able to be declared as an institution of eminence by the government of India, barely a decade, where only 10 public and 8 private universities have been declared so among 1,000 Indian universities, it is largely because of 5 things that we have done. First, we have had the greatest commitment to philanthropy and an ability to create access to education for a large number of people, not only from India, but also from other parts of the world. Second, we made a commitment to bring the best minds when it comes to attracting faculty and giving opportunities for people not only from India, from around the world. Just to give you a perspective, we have 550 full time faculty members. 15% of them are full time faculty members recruited from over 32 countries and regions in the
Oh
world.
my
These
goodness!
are
And
people
what do you do to
who have
attract?
come.
What do you do to attract these people? What do you do to
Well, I
attract these
must say
people?
that, yes, yeah, thank you for that question, Mr. Islam. Well, first of all, I think most people who ended up coming to Jindal are people who have as a deeper sense of giving back to society. I think one of the things, I mean, I will be very candid with you. While our salaries and compensation is attractive in the Indian context, I must say that these people who have come from United States and Australia and Canada and China and
Right.
Singapore and the whole world, it is not the money that has brought them. It is our vision and our commitment to essentially, enable an opportunity for young people to change the world. And I must also say that the fact that they are working in a vibrant democracy which is deeply committed to pluralism and rule of law, and the fact that India has 850 million people who are less than 35 years of age, and the fact that we have 1.35 billion people, among whom these 850 million people are not only going to shape the future of India, but also the future of the world. The possibility to change and to contribute to a transformation of a large and old democracy, probably to some extent, inspired them to come. And of course, other things which are important for a university, including academic freedom, institutional autonomy, resources, and a research ecosystem, internationalization, and partnership with universities around the world. All these things have enabled people from around the world to come to Jindal.
Now, do you have a lot of foreign students also in your institution? And is the Indian government working with you to encourage the foreign students to attend the Indian educational institution, and the majority of the foreign students are
Yes,
from what country they are from, and why do they come
sure.
to India?
So
And you made the point. You made a lot of good points about the being a model for democracy around the globe, and be the hope for the world rather than a fear.
yeah. Yes. So, as far as foreign students is concerned, Mr. Islam, this has been a work in progress. Our we have had, I would say, we have had greater success in attracting the best of international faculty than international students, and there are a number of reasons. Just to give you a perspective, we have around 5,200 students on campus, of which less than 100 students are international students. So our
Oh,
international student footprint are much smaller, and they come from, say, 20 other countries in the world. And there are very good reasons. First of all, most foreign students who come to India from around the world end up coming to India to pursue, let's say, engineering, science and technology, and STEM disciplines. And you may be
right.
aware that we are a non STEM, non medicine university, in the sense we purely focus on humanities and social sciences. Second, it is also true that unlike most parts of the Western world, including cities and city states such as Singapore and Hong Kong, the inward mobility of international students from the developed and the developing world is largely to the developed world, as opposed to countries like India. So, India has not yet become an international destination for higher education. So, there are challenges for attracting international students to come to India when it comes to choosing India as a preferred higher education destination. Having said that, we are deeply committed to attracting students. We do better when it comes to exchange students and short-term study abroad programs. For example, every year we host nearly 300 to 400 students. When I said the 80 to 100 students, I meant the full-time residential students from abroad pursuing degree programs. But when it comes to short-term programs, we have, say, 100 students from Australia coming on a year-to-year basis. We have students from United States and also from China and other parts of the world who might come for short duration, and that's something which we have been promoting.
You talk a little bit about the research that you put a lot of emphasis. So what kind of cutting edge research do your university doing? Can you give us some example of that to illustrate your point?
Sure. So we have 8 different schools at our university. We have a law school, a business school, a school of international affairs, a school of public policy, a school of liberal arts, a school of journalism, a school of architecture, and a school of banking and finance. So the first thing we have
Wow.
done is we have created research centers across different schools. So we have 55 research centers across these 8 schools, and 3 research and capacity building institutes that the university has. Second, what we've done is that individual faculty members have ended up having twin appointment, in which they are part of a school as a faculty member. In addition to that, they are also a part of a research center. Now, this will enable them to focus on areas that they work in. So, for example, in our law school, there are people who work on issues surrounding trade and investment, or intellectual property rights and competition law. There are people who work on comparative constitutional law and human rights. There are people who work on feminist legal theory and development. In our public policy school, there are people who work on health and education, or, for example, social inclusion. In our School of International Affairs, there are people who work on sustainable development goals, including conflict resolution. We have a Center for European Studies. We have a center which focuses on Asia and Africa. So there are, depending upon the school and the center's location, our faculty members are engaged in 5 areas of work within each center. First, they contribute towards research publications by articles, by writing reports, by actually contributing to book chapters. Second, they are working in collaboration with think tanks, government agencies, intergovernmental organizations, including United Nations. Third, they are actively working as a public intellectual, writing op-eds in newspapers and being available for interviews in including in television and other media. Fourth, they are also producing independent reports in partnership with organizations, so that that becomes a collective endeavor for influencing public opinion. And the fifth aspect of research which we do is each of our schools also have journals, our own university journals, which our faculty members provide thought leadership.
Very well said. I wanted to ask you two questions, and then the last question I will ask you. Uh, you have the partnership with the foreign universities, correct? What is your
Yes.
success? What's your criteria for the success in order for them to have a win-win situation for you and foreign universities as well? And also, tell us a little bit about the status of higher education in India and how do you go about making the education more affordable and accessible?
So first is that given the fact that we are a very entrepreneurial university and a new university, we were very conscious of the fact that to make an important impact in the world of higher education, both in India and around the world, we need to be engaging with the world at large. So we had identified the leading universities in the world as and engaged with them. In the early years, they believed in our vision and made a commitment towards working with us, but immediately thereafter, it was all about the work of our faculty and the reputation of our university. So we have 10 different forms of partnership which we have with a typical university around the world. They include faculty exchange, student exchange, joint teaching, joint
Right.
research, joint conferences, joint publications, dual degree programs, short term study abroad program, inward mobility immersion program, and joint executive education program. We may not do all the 10 with a single university. We may do one, two, or three. And if we end up doing more than three, they become one of our strategic, and we have some of them around the world. Now the key thing in any partnership is our commitment to creating an impact in the life of a student or a faculty or a subject matter. We are very conscious of not just signing meaningless photo opportunity based MOUs which does not lead to any substantive impact in the life of our
Right.
students or faculty.
Very well
And
said.
that's how we build partnerships. The
Now,
second question regarding, please go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead. Status
So
of
the
higher
second,
education in India,
yeah.
and
So
how do you
you,
make it more
well, let me
affordable
say
and
this.
accessible? Yeah, how do you make it more affordable, accessible to all the people? And you kind of touched upon that a while ago, but I want you to expand a little bit.
So, Mr. Islam, let me quickly say that India is in a very unique situation in the world today as far as higher education is concerned. At one level, we have a historically evolved civilizational heritage of playing leadership in the world. The oldest university in the world is Bologna University, which is 1,000 years old. Oxford, where I went to, is nearly 800 years old. But Indian subcontinent had universities over 2000 years ago. Nalanda, Takshashila, Vallabhi, and Vikramshila were the world's leading and the only higher education institutions. It even had students and faculty from around the world. Such was its extraordinary leadership that was prevailing a few thousand years ago. But of course, both pre independent India and since 1947, the post independent India has had dramatic impact on the life of higher education in India. At the dawn of Indian independence, we had only 20 universities, and today we have nearly 1,000 plus universities. The complexities of higher education system in India is quite a large topic, but if I were to summarize it, I will say that a large part of our over 70 years of post-independent India's history, we have focused to a large extent on creating quantity and access for a large number of people. And that is one of the main goals of the expansion from 20 universities to 1,000 universities. From we have a few number of colleges to nearly 40,000 colleges, and we provide education. The higher education sector is approximately 30 million students who are part of the higher education sector. However, in our zeal and excitement to expand the higher education sector, I must say that we have compromised on quality and rarely have been able to pursue excellence. And we, of course,
Right.
know that quality and quantity may not go hand in hand. So today,
Correct.
a lot of emphasis, while there have been leading institutions in India, such as the IIT and IIMs and the Delhi University and JNU and many such universities in the public sector, the dawn of the private sector's role in higher education, starting from the late 80s all the way, have not necessarily been very positive. The private higher education institutions in India, to a large extent, have unfortunately been engaged in many pejorative and dubious practices, which have over the years brought the reputation of these institutions to a lower level. Our own creation and a few others are part of a new imagination of private, not for profit, philanthropically enabled, US modeled higher education institutions, which have enormous focus on quality and the kind of values that some of the leading US universities have advanced. And that makes our university quite unique as opposed to many others. I believe that the future of higher education in India is going to be driven by the kind of opportunities that the young people are seeking when it's come to promoting excellence, innovation, entrepreneurship, and internationalization.
Very well said. I wanted you to shed some bright lights on the Citizenship Amendment Bill, which was just passed, which is very controversial. There's a lot of protest. There's a lot of police brutality. It's important that you mentioned the point of pluralism, inclusiveness, and diversity. Diversity brings us together, and if we're together, we can help shape a better future for India. India needs to focus more on the economy, job, prosperity, and being inclusive to a society that you become a global beacon of hope for democracy around the globe. That is obviously not it may have been the intent of the Citizenship Amendment Bill, but that's not the way it turned out to be. And I do not know why the Muslims were excluded from that part, which didn't make any sense. We need we do not need a religious nationalism. We need a unifying nationalism in order for us to do a better job. That's my take on it, and now I want to get your take.
I
Go ahead.
entirely agree with you, Mr. Islam. I think a lot of people in India today are deeply concerned about what the Citizenship Amendment Act has, in many ways, created a framework when it comes to providing citizenship. I think let me begin by saying that I would like to, answer this question from the standpoint of a constitutional law professor and somebody who looks at it from a legal and constitutional law standpoint. While I
Very okay.
appreciate the social movements and student movements that are happening as we speak, it's important to unbundle these issues when it comes to understanding what this law is all about. Uh, India, as when the Constituent Assembly was debating about the type of nation that we were creating, India expressly, and that was because of the leadership of the founders of the Indian Republic, all the way from Mahatma Gandhi, but also leaders such as Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhai Patel, Dr. Ambedkar, and many others who led the Indian freedom movement. They were very conscious of the fact that India will is a secular nation, and most importantly, it will not subscribe to any single religion determining the ideas of citizenship. And that was a very important decision because, unlike Pakistan, which was created
Right.
through a framework of religion as its basis, India was not. And this was an express, conscious, and calibrated and deliberate choice that the constitution makers in India made. And that was very important for us to recognize. And of course, the constitution itself laid the foundations of creating a secular republic. And regardless of whichever political party that has been in power in the last over 70 years, has been deeply committed to the ideas of secularism, but most importantly, citizenship that would be based not based upon any a particular religion
religion.
given priority over the
So
others.
faith should not be
When it comes
criteria
to
for
the
Islam.
actual,
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So, when it comes to the
Go ahead.
specific provisions of the Constitution, of the Citizenship Amendment Act, I think while there are legitimate objectives of providing citizenship for people who have suffered from religious persecution from the neighboring countries, and to that extent, the Citizenship Amendment Act is advancing a very important and rather liberal and progressive notions of providing citizenship. The fact that it has chosen to exclude one particular religion is simply not only unnecessary, but in my view, also unconstitutional. And I believe that when the matter comes before a court of law, which is right now, in the next several weeks and months, the Supreme Court will be examining the matter. There is every reason why this particular legislation will be read down, and I believe that this particular limitation of excluding a religion needs to be corrected. And one of the simpler ways to do that, and that's something which I believe that there have been advice possibly provided to the government at the level of the parliamentary standing committee type conversations, is to not to mention the names of any religion, and to use the test of religious persecution as a framework for determining the suitability. And in any case, as you know, Mr. Islam, citizenship is in many ways an absolute prerogative, and within the part of the sovereign right of a country, and it is pretty discretionary as to for a country to determine who they want to give citizenship anyways. So there was enough means, both legally and constitutionally available for the government, to pretty much determine who who they should give citizenship anyways. So this, adding the religious particular names of religions into this legislation, has unnecessarily distracted, and to some extent undermined the very noble, and in my view, a very progressive and an emancipatory objective of the Citizenship Amendment Act. So to that
It's a,
extent, we need to do a course correction.
and you will continue to work with the government to make sure that they understands that if the United States comes back with the Trump, and I mean he's not he's not the fellow that represents my value, a character and conscience, that this country just for the Christians, nobody else can come to this country. So what will people like me and many 3 million or 4 million Indian Americans who have made this country the prosper and also as a part of the inclusive society, these are the values that we can proudly and truly embrace, what would they say to them? And then what about the fact in Pakistan there's a Sunni Shia, there's a Bahora, there's a many, and then you have in Burma, in Burma as well as in there are Uyghur Muslims, which is in China. That just doesn't seem to be fair things to do. And it turns out that unfortunately the current government is more interested about the religious nationalism rather than being a society that we can all take a pride in it, bringing the people together. And I will also say, and I said that many times, if 200 million Muslims succeed, India will succeed and the world will succeed. And an attack on one faith is an attack on all faith.
No, absolutely. I
Go ahead.
think it is only fair to say that the one of the most important strengths of India is our deep and pervasive commitment to pluralism and the ideals of pluralism. But I will also add, to be fair to this whole framework, there have been other countries which have, given a specific citizenship to certain religions at different points of time. I mean, in fact, United States is an interesting example. There was an amendment, a particular amendment. I think was, I don't know that I'm not able to get the name,
Yeah,
but
about
Jews have been
Iraqi
given,
Christians to come over here. Yeah, but the
yes,
amendment
and
never got
also
passed.
Jews, and Jews have been given citizenship. Particular, I mean, so religion has been used in other countries, including United States, to be able to give citizenship. But my view is that Indian constitutional framework has had expressly rejected the idea of using religion for awarding citizenship. And to that extent, I believe our commitment to this notion of rejecting any form of religious, let's say, framework for determining citizenship is actually much higher than even the United States. So it may not help us. And sometimes commentators in the United States, whose persuasions are more on the right, have actually said that United States has done it and many other countries have done it. Sometimes Jews have been favored, some other times Christians have been favored. Those arguments are not useful in our context, because I believe India's commitment to this pluralism and our constitutional protection granted to this notion is actually much stronger and much higher. And our courts have consistently enforced and said that this particular element is a basic structure of the Constitution of India.
Very well said. We need to be the model for the world, right? So people can follow us. We need to be leader,
Yes.
and that's what the point you're making. Uh, Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for being here, and thank you for watching the show. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week.